Hey, what's up everyone? Roger here from The Real Breakdown. Guys, I just walked out of watching Deadpool and Wolverine for the second time. Yes, guys, I've seen it twice. The first time I did do a straight out of theater reaction, which should be up on the channel as a YouTube short. Now, guys, I'm going to give you some more of my in-depth thoughts on what I thought about the film. This is what I can say about this movie. If you are a fan of Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2, then you will definitely be a fan of this film. You'll definitely enjoy it. Now, if you've seen me for some time, you'll know that I'm actually not a big fan of Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2. Look, Deadpool, just like Ryan Reynolds and the way he plays it, I know he plays it just how the character's supposed to be. A lot of people love him for that. To me, that's just not my cup of tea. It's not my vibe. It's not the type of character or the type of humor or the type of movie that I enjoy. So over gratuitous violence, F-bombs everywhere, nonsensical bloodshed, ridiculous things happening throughout the movie. It's just not really my thing. A lot of people find it funny. A lot of people enjoy it, find comedy out of it. I'm glad for you guys that enjoy it, just not really for me. With that said, I can definitely tell you that Deadpool and Wolverine is probably my favorite Deadpool movie out of the three. Do I think this is a film that I love? No. Do I feel this is a film that I like? I'm actually going to say no, and I'll explain why in a moment. But in general, guys, I got to say, this is just like Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2. It's more Marvelified, like it, obviously now he's brought into the MCU, right? Disney bought Fox, all this and that. So yes, it's connected now to the MCU. We get awesome cameos. You get the references. By the way, this is going to be non-spoiler, so I'm not going to mention anything. If I mention anything, it'll be stuff that's in the trailers. So yeah, so like we saw in the trailers, yep, they are showing him the MCU and that timeline. So that I enjoyed. I thought that was really cool. So that's what makes this like my favorite Deadpool movie so far. However, overall, I still felt that Deadpool fell to the same tropes that the first two did, where the comedy, the cameos, the nonsensical violence, all this, it still was the same, and it still led to the same outcome of a story that is not necessarily that great. It's not really a great story. It's not really something that has a lot of character development. Actually, I feel that actually Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2 have a little bit more of that, because yes, the first one is a little more grounded into the relationship with Vanessa and all this and that. So what I gotta say is that overall, guys, my general thoughts on this are that I walked out of it thinking, okay, this movie more so, you know what? It's actually very close. I will compare it to Multiverse of Madness. And if you know me, you know that's not a good comparison, because I felt that this movie, just like Multiverse of Madness, relied so heavily on cameos and surprise appearances to like get the audience hype. And yes, as an audience member, I got hyped when all these amazing cameos come out, when all these characters come out. And in general, like, I found it to be really entertaining in those little bits of moments. They're like little injections of adrenaline. But then outside of that, if you take that away, what do we really have? And I gotta say, I found it that the story was lacking. In general, my biggest gripe with the movie, and maybe this is more on me, but also like how they sold it in the marketing, is that like this movie, guys, it really doesn't really have an impact on the MCU. Like, it doesn't push the MCU timeline further. It doesn't really explain many things. And this is a gripe that I've had with the MCU for a while. It really started, I mean, it started with Multiverse of Madness, but continued on with Ant-Man Quantumania, where they said, oh, this is really going to explain what's going on. Oh, this is really going to touch on the multiverse saga. And honestly, like, I've been disappointed again, where like, yes, this had multiverse stuff, right? We in the trailers, you can see that, they go to the void and stuff. And honestly, like, at the end of the movie, it didn't really, I'm trying hard not to give spoilers, but like, it really didn't push the storyline forward. I do not know more than I did before watching this movie about the MCU and where it's going. And that's super frustrating, right? I mean, we got like the Infinity Saga and how all that was played out, and I'm not here to complain about all that, but essentially, I still do not feel like I have a better grasp on what this multiverse saga is about, who the main bad is or any of those things. And I feel like the trailers and the marketing have kind of told us that that was going to happen, and it really didn't. So again, a little, I'm going to say very let down on that end. I felt that this movie, I was actually very hyped for this movie going in because I was excited about that aspect of it. Didn't happen. And I can tell you this, guys. So as I mentioned, this is, I've seen it twice now, and I got to say the second time going to watch it, I actually disliked it more than I did the first time. So if I'm not as like, happy or excited or, upbeat about it as the first videos I made after it, it's because I watched it a second time, and the second time I was like, yeah, this is a lot of, there's so much like the nonsensical violence and like yes, there's a lot of gore, there's a lot of blood, and yeah, you got Deadpool Wolverine, but it was just visual noise. It was visual noise to me because you got two characters that we know can regenerate. So again, without giving spoilers, yes, you do see them fight each other. You see it in the trailers. And like by the end of it, like it doesn't really matter because we know that they both heal, and we know that they both auto regenerate, or they regenerate as far as like healing. They have healing factors. So it felt like there was no consequences, no stakes. The storyline wasn't necessarily as strong. I gotta say too, like one thing that people, whenever I say, oh, I don't like Deadpool 1 or Deadpool 2 so much, one thing that people clap back at me with, and I give them to this, is like, oh, but like the characters, right? Like, the storyline, Vanessa, like, some of the other relationships that Wade Wilson, right, Deadpool, like builds along the way, like 100%. Like I totally like get that and agree with that. And I actually think that's one of the things that was missing here, right? So like, I think that one of the things that was lacking was those characters aren't as much of players in this, right? Because you're focused more on Deadpool and Wolverine's like kind of story. And it was really missing some of the heart. And without giving spoilers away, one thing that really kind of bugged me, especially the second time watching, was that in the trailers we see that, oh, this Wolverine, like, he disappointed his world, and he's the worst Wolverine, and this and that, and like, they kind of hint at like, I did something terrible, like I let my people down, like my world went to shit because of me. And then you're like, okay, what happened? What is it like Logan, where like, you find in the movie Logan, you find out that Professor Xavier, he's going through these strokes and all this stuff. He killed all the X-Men. Like, what is it? And they, first of all, they don't fully like head on answer that question. And like, even when they kind of do, they don't necessarily give you a full on answer. So, what I gotta say is that the answer that they gave, while it wasn't really like an actual answer, it was actually quite unsatisfactory for me. I was like, okay, so that whole story beat that I'm like, ooh, something crazy happened, and like, am I gonna feel bad for Deadpool, or I mean, for Wolverine, or am I gonna be shocked at what he did? Am I gonna be appalled? No, not really. And so that's another thing where I was like, man, like what? Like, what is this, So I just felt that like the story was kind of lacking, to be honest. Yes, there's a beginning, middle, and end, and yes, there's a villain, maybe there's two villains, right? Like, whatever the plot is, by the end of it, I'm like, all right, so we have good guys, we have villains, something happens, there's a lot of blood and F-bombs dropped, and at the end of the day, I don't even want to say what happens at the end. Like, I don't even want to confirm if the issue gets resolved or not, because I don't want people to be spoiled, but I just was disappointed, to be honest. And yeah, in the end, guys, is this a bad movie? No. Is this a movie that I think people should go see? Yeah, of course. It's a fun time at the theaters. I had a pretty fun time, right? The action is pretty cool. I will say the opening sequence is pretty badass and funny, but like beyond that, it just kind of gets, I don't want to say worse, but I get tired of it, guys. I get tired of all the gory bloodiness when it has no meaning. If like we know that these characters regenerate, and like, okay, you're gonna maybe stab through a bunch of like, NPC like characters that don't matter. Okay, cool. The cameos are fantastic. Some of the jokes are hilarious. Like, I give it that. But at the end of the day, what do I always say I care about is story and characters and character development. And those were some of the things that I think were lacking. And again, similar as Multiverse of Madness, it's like you cannot rely on cameos, you cannot rely on Easter eggs for you to have a movie that like is actually good. Like in my eyes, at least. I know I'm in the minority. People are gonna love this movie. This movie's gonna make $1 billion for sure. Like pre-ticket sales are going crazy. My theater was full, both of them. So I have no doubt this movie is going to be successful. Again, guys, I'm just giving you my thoughts in the fact that like it's not my taste, my kind of music, right? I prefer something that's a little more grounded. And I understand I'm saying grounded when a superhero movie, but in general, guys, it really felt like they were kind of in some way, shape, or form like bringing Deadpool to the MCU, kind of, and like also paying an homage to like the Fox Marvel properties, and it kind of felt more like that by the end of it. And I will say again, without saying what it is, make sure you stay for the end credits. There is a montage that again kind of backs up the point I just made without telling you what it is, but I really enjoyed it as a fan. And then yes, at the very, very end, after all the credits, there is one like funny tag post-credit scene. So, but again, like to be honest, none of those push forward the MCU storyline. And so bottom line, guys, look, Deadpool has never been my cup of tea. So I was really, really hoping that this was like, I walked in for this giddy and excited because I'm like, damn, this could be like the first Deadpool movie that like I really, really like, especially with that last trailer they put out where it was like super serious in tone. Wasn't really like that. The best parts were the cameos because you get that pop, you get that adrenaline rush, you get that excitement in the movie theater. Like my movie theater clapped and like oohed and awed at everything. So like it was a good time in that sense. All right, so I just got to say, the characters of Paradox and Cassandra Nova were characters that were really interesting. I found them to be like very attention grabbing whenever they were on screen. And although I'm not going to say they had phenomenal performances or like, oh wow, I love these characters, I want to see them again, they were two characters that whenever they came on screen truly battled with Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool for attention. Particularly Cassandra Nova. I felt that like she could really go toe to toe with Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool as far as like just like charisma and like, no, not charisma, but just like having attention grabbing characteristics in her performance that really surprised me a little bit. So I won't say anything about what their role is, but I definitely wanted to point them out as like two characters that I did not expect to find as interesting and captivating, but they definitely were. And the other thing I gotta mention is, wow, the soundtrack for this, I mean, I don't know how much money they spent on music rights for this movie, but it has to be hefty. I mean, I'm not going to mention any of them, but like I can tell you the opening sequence has a very popular song. A few other scenes, a few other key scenes have very popular songs. And it's a wide-ranging amount of artists and types of music. So I got to say the soundtrack was pretty great. So yeah, with that said, guys, I'm just going to wrap it up by saying like, you know, this movie is definitely Deadpool. It definitely feels like Deadpool. And unfortunately, like for me, that's not really what I like. It's not really what I want. It's not really what I enjoy. So for me, yeah, this was a movie that was a bit of a letdown. And even though with all the MCU stuff, like in the end, it didn't really deliver on what I was wanting out of it, or at least like what I hoped that it would do for the MCU. I'm sure a lot of people are going to enjoy it. So definitely, if you haven't yet, make sure you go check it out, see it in cinemas. And yeah, guys, that's the real breakdown on Wolverine and Deadpool. We'll see you guys in the next one. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for what's next to come on the Real Breakdown.